في عقد الأشعري وفقه مالك وفي طريقة الجنيد السالك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وبعد، فنعيش هذه اللحظات. We live these moments with the wise and beneficial words of our scholars and ulama, who are the inheritors of the Anbiya and Rusul, and they inherit the sanad that leads us back to Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who is our shafi', our intercessor on the day that we find no one to intercede for us. He is our teacher, our muallim, for his sunnah is the guide through this life, through the darkness and challenges that we find our ummah and ourselves in. The sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the nur, is the light that extinguishes the darkness that is before us. And this light allows for us to find the sirat al-mustaqim, the straight and forward path that leads us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma hdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided us to Islam and has left us the wise words of the ulama as a source of guidance, help, assistance. And we find ourselves with al-Murshid al-Mu'in, the guiding helper. Meant to guide the students, the masses, and the Jama'ah of Muslimin along this path that is within the dunya that we find bendy. You know, when you're climbing a mountain, you know why you can't, why roads for mountains are are windy. They actually can't go straight forward. You look at it, for example, you speak to an architect, tell them, why did you design the road up a mountain windy and not straight? Because if you made it straight, this is the shortest distance. You just go directly up. But not every car or vehicle or human or beast can climb a mountain straight. In fact, the most effective way is to zigzag, to go right and left until you get to the top of the mountain. Because you're able to actually uh, 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 um, tackle the height, the elevation, without falling and spend or exhaust less less effort in climbing the mountain than you would if you just straight walked up the mountain itself. Likewise, the books that we have, they allow for us to navigate the mountain back and forth, back and forth. The challenges and difficulties of this dunya, if we just take them straight on, we're not going to be able to get to al-akhirah. This path that we have, this life that we have, this dunya that we have, not every single step is just straightforward. Sometimes it feels windy, it feels like you're not going anywhere. It feels like you're going this way and back. It takes forever and ever just to get to your destination. Likewise, this path to ilm is a long one. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اللهم نسألك علما نافعا رزقا طيبا حلالا واسعا مباركا فيه. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين واختم لنا بالحسنى وأنت راض عنا يا كريم. Inshallah, we'll begin these moments with reviewing the disliked actions of prayer. قال الناظم رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا بعلومه وبعلوم مشايخنا في الدارين آمين. أريه بسملة تعوذا في الفرض والسجود في الثوب كذا كور عمامة وبعض كمه وحمل شيء فيه أو في فمه قراءة لدى السجود والركوع تفكر القلب بما نفى الخشوع وعبث والالتفات والدعاء أثنى قراءة كذا إن ركع تشبيك أو فرقعة الأصابع تخصر تغميض عين تابع. The scholars have disliked saying the basmala and seeking refuge in obligatory prayer as well as prostration on a garment. The same goes for both part of the turban or some of one's sleeve and carrying something in the sleeve or not. Reciting during prostration or bowing is disliked, as is letting the mind wander with thoughts that contradict humility. Laying with one's hands looking around, or making supplications during the recitation, interlocking or cracking the fingers, placing the hands on the hip, closing the eyes during prayer. We begin with the basmala, and this should be a review. There should be a review because we've talked about the dislike actions. لكن أنا إحنا every class, what I like to do is I like to go back a couple of abiyat to make sure that the final words of the previous class are still on our minds as we get into the next subject, the next piece of information. What we should be doing as students together in reading the words of Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir rahimahullah is that we're also correcting ourselves and reviewing our discussion or our conversations and so on. طيب أول شيء كانت البسملة. And the basmala is to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and to say that in the obligatory prayers. This is because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions Umar and Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Abu Bakr, they would start their prayers with al-Fatiha without saying the basmala. Imam Malik also discouraged saying it out loud or silently in the obligatory prayers, while it is permissible in the voluntary prayers. Number two is seeking refuge, the ta'awud, saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. It's also disliked to be said in obligatory prayers according to the school of Imam Malik, and this too is based on the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is not reported to have consistently recited the ta'awud in the obligatory prayers. Number three is the sujood fi thawbi, prostration on garments, and it is discouraged to prostrate on a garment pulled under the forehead, as it may reflect a form of comfort seeking or avoidance of contact with the ground, detracting from the humility of prayer. This is not to say that, like, for example, you're praying, right, and then this part of the turban covered your face by accident. Part of the turban covered your face by accident. This is specifically like taking a part of your turban and going like this, huh? Putting your thobe up specifically to cover your face from the ground, as if you had just done a facial and you wanted to keep, your pores clean or something. I don't know. That might be a little feminine of a man to do such a thing, but I would see it normally for women. The one should be praying in a clean place of prayer, huh? And the place that they're praying in should be devoid of any najasa or any harm to one's body, and you're not going to be praying on cobblestone or rocks, something that's painful to make sujood on. You should avoid that unless there's no way to avoid it. You can use the prayer mat. The prayer mat, depending on its material, could be just like it's like silky and it's made of like these like soft fibers, luxurious fibers. This could be a dislike. The better is to pray on hasir. The better is to pray on hasir or the ground directly, wood on the wooden ground or the carpet that's directly in the masjid, as we've talked about before in the previous weeks. Hopefully the audio is clear, um, and you guys are able to hear our words. If there's any issues, please let me know. Trying to see here. Sound is a bit muffled. The sound or no? Or is it still muffled? Bismillah. Testing the audio. Now? Are you guys able to hear the sound? It might just be an issue with the internet. I'm not entirely sure. طيب. Okay. I'm seeing messages that it's better now. Let's continue. So we said the basmala, the ta'awudh, and purposely praying a piece of fabric from one's garment to avoid touching the ground in sujood or in prostration. Number four is we said number four. Number four is kawru amamatin wa ba'du kummih. It is disliked to fold a part of one's amama, fold a one's amama or sleeve. Yani you would take your sleeve, and pray like that, right? So when you're making sujood, you would come down like that, or you would fold up the amama and you would bring it down to cover your forehead or your nose. And you would it would prevent direct contact with the ground whilst making sujood. And this is problematic, right? Why? Because the a'dha, the seven limbs that are supposed to be in contact with the ground, technically are no longer in contact. Some of them might not be in contact, right? And so we want to avoid this kind of situation by doing what? By by having the garments here be out of. Okay? Number five, حمل شيء فيه أو في فمه, carrying something in the sleeve or mouth during prayer. Anything that can distract you. Anything that can distract you. You have things in your pockets that are a distraction. You have a bag on it. You have stuff that is on your body, unless it's essential that it's attached to your body for whatever reason, and it should be removed. Your keys or something like that. That can somebody they may need to hold on to their weapon while they're in salah for whatever reason. That they might be in warfare, or that they might work security for the masjid, something of the like, right? And it needs to be on there. So that's another issue. Carrying items in the sleeve or mouth during prayer is discouraged because it distracts the person from humility and focus that is required. If something in the mouth prevents proper recitation or movement, it can invalidate the prayer. And this is something understood too. Like, let's say you ate half a burger and you walked into the prayer with that. Mm, uh, uh, this is dislike, right? This is dislike. If it prevents you from recitation and prevents you from being able to audibly say things, this could possibly invalidate the prayer as well. Assalamu alaikum. Testing the audio again. Testing the audio again. Is everybody able to hear? Just making sure. Hello? Assalamu alaikum. One more time. Okay. I'm going to just continue. Um, admins, let me know if the audio is okay now. Bismillah. We were saying, Bismillah, that حمل شيء فيه أو في فمه, that carrying something in the mouth, like somebody ate half a burger, for example. This is dislike, right? You took a munch out of a giant burger and put it in your mouth, and then you went to prayer. You say Allahu Akbar. Bismillah ar-Rahman This is going to invalidate the prayer because technically you cannot uh you cannot pray with that. Is the audio still bad? The audio, can you guys hear? Bismillah. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Today has been an interesting day of technology. Alhamdulillah. May Allah forgive us. Um, uh, the admins can let me know if the audio is clear or not. Tamam. 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 I think the input was just incorrect. طيب. بسم الله. قلنا حمل شيء فيه حمل شيء فيه أو في فمه حمل شيء فيه أو في فمه ما معنى هذا؟ الشيء that which you put inside of your mouth or in your arm sleeves. This the whole point here, the reason why from Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir and the Fuqaha is that things that are in your mouth, in your hands, in your sleeves, on your person, in prayer could possibly distract you. These things could possibly distract you. And so if they distract you in prayer, the best thing is to have them removed. Why? Because you want to have khushu' in the salah. It's from the requirements of salah that the person has khushu', that is, he's focused in his prayer. Therefore, having something in the mouth, having something in the sleeve, these things need to be removed, right? And you can't be walking into prayer with half a burger and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah. You can't do that. This could possibly invalidate the salah. Why? You can't even pronounce the ayat of the Quran. You can't pronounce the things that are required for you to pronounce in salah. So you don't want anything to impede on your prayer or recitation or movement. Therefore, these things are disliked. قراءة لدى السجود والركوع. Reciting Quran in the prostrations of ruku' or sujud. Both of these things are discouraged, disliked in the salah. The Prophet ﷺ said, I have been prohibited from reciting the Quran while bowing or prostrating. In bowing, one should glorify Allah. They should say Subhanallah al-Azim. And in sujud, one should say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Right? Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Number seven. تفكر القلب بما نفى الخشوع. Thinking about worldly matters. Allahu Akbar, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah. You're thinking, Alhamdulillah, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, I leave the refrigerator door open. Subhanallah, astaghfirullah al-Azim. I wonder if Manchester United is going to win today. Ya ilaha illallah. Did Liverpool start Muhammad Salah? Astaghfirullah al-Azim. How will we win Champions League? Allahu Akbar. Terrible. 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 One, because you're thinking about people making millions of dollars and you're still poor in your house. Number two, you're distracted from salah, which is even more important. One should be focused on their salah and their ibadah while they're praying. Number seven, we said letting the mind wander. Number 8 is abathun, which is playing or fidgeting. What does playing or fidgeting mean? Yani moving around, playing with your beard, playing with your jewelry, playing with your shirt, touching your arms, touching your nose, moving around. So much so that it looks like you're no longer playing. You're just playing with the items on your person. Any form of fidgeting, such as playing with one's beard, clothing, or jewelry during prayer, is discouraged, as it indicates what? A lack of concentration. Imam Ibn al-Musayyib, he said, if the heart is truly humbled, then the limbs will also follow. If the heart is truly humble, then the limbs will also follow. Turning the head is number 9, which is al-iltifat. And looking around during prayer is also discouraged. Turning left, up, down, right, turning up. This is the Prophet ﷺ likened this to the stealing of the prayer by shaitan. However, if one turns slightly without turning their head, their whole body, or losing their direction towards the qibla, the prayer remains valid. the purpose here for the fuqaha, the reason why they mention this, obviously, if you turn your whole back, if you we'll look at it in muqiyat salah, if you turn your whole back from the place of prayer, your prayer is nullified, right? But yani, turning right, turning left, this technically doesn't nullify your prayer, but it is disliked, and it could nullify your prayer if the actions become too extreme to the point where it no longer looks like you're praying anymore. The next one, making supplications during recitation, ad-du'a athna qira'ati, while reciting Surah al-Fatiha or other surahs of the Quran, it is disliked to insert supplications or personal invocation. Yeah, the recitation has its place and the prayer should be kept orderly. This meaning, like in the middle of your recitation, like literally. For example, إن المتقين في جنات النعيم. اللهم ارزقنا بالجنة يا رب. You can't do that. You have to finish the surah. You have to finish the ayat. Okay. You can't be doing dua in the middle of recitation. This is disliked. Number 11, interlocking or cracking the fingers in salah. That's disliked. Placing hands on the hips. He calls this takhassu. This is standing in the prayer with one's hands on their hips. This is disliked. The posture can reflect arrogance or laziness, which is an inappropriate state of submission before Allah. Why would your hands be at your hips anyways in the first place? Possibly some people, they may get tired and they put their hands on their hips. The Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited this gesture in salah. Number 13 is taghmīdu aynin. Closing the eyes during prayer is generally discouraged. However, if it's needed for focus, it's allowed. But ideally, the person in salah should be focused on what is directly in front of them or their place of prostration, depending on where they're standing in salah. If they're standing, they look directly forward. If they're sitting, they look at their place of prostration. This summarizes the disliked actions of salah, which we spoke of last week. Then he says, rahimahullah, فصل وخمس صلوات فرض عين وهي كفاية لميت دون مين فروضها التكبير أربعا دعاء ونية سلام سر تبعا وكالصلاة الغسل دفل وكفن. فقال أولا عين. The word ayn, it means essence or individual. So fard ayn is what is specific for the individual. Right? Then he begins to differentiate between what is fard ayn and what is fard kifaya. Al-fard ayn is an individual obligation, while the fard kifaya is a communal obligation. Learning about how to pray, how to make wudu, how to fast, how to make hajj, how to make umrah, or maybe specifically you are a car salesman and you need to learn how the contracts, the fiqh of buyur. These matters can be fard ayn, depending on the situation that you are in. Generally speaking, for all the Muslimin, the fard ayn for them is to know their the essential points of Aqīdah, which we studied in this text, as well as the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman. The fard kifaya are for the Tulab al-Ilm and the Fuqaha and for the Imams, wal-Bahithun, the researchers, and all of the individuals who are involved in da'wah at its highest levels or its various levels. All of them are taking a part in a fard kifaya, which is a communal obligation, meaning the community, that there's a Muslim community that, for example, if the Muslim community decided to move to Antarctica, they would need to bring fuqaha with them. They cannot just go by themselves. They have to have a faqih. They have to have somebody who's knowledgeable in the deen and who can provide rulings and so forth, or at least be in constant contact with one until they can actually have an imam join their community. So starting from the first line, we identify the distinctions between fard ayn and fard kifaya. And then the Imam rahimahullah just talks about Salatul Janazah in the second line. Then in highlighting the meaning the meaning of Ibn Ashir's statement here, this compares the funeral prayer, washing, burying, and shrouding the deceased. The types, first of all, the types of prayers and their ruling. We mentioned fard ayn. So it's obligatory on each person by themselves, meaning no one can perform it on behalf of another. This includes the 5 daily prayers as indicated in the hadith of Anas ibn Malik rahimahullah radiyallahu anhu, who said, a man asked Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, how many prayers has Allah obligated on his servants? He replied, Allah has obligated 5 prayers upon his servants. Ibn Ashir alludes to this with his line, وخمس صلوات وفرض عين. ثم ذكر فرض كفاية, which is required for the community and then performed by some. It absolves the responsibility of others. It includes Salat al-Janazah, which is a communal obligation. As seen in the hadith, when Najashi passed away, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Akhukum, your brother has passed away, stand and pray over him. And we stood in rows to pray. This is what Ibn Ashir rahimahullah means when he said, هي كفاية لميت دون ميت. The word main actually means falsehood or lie. He added this here as a without lie. He means without lie, without false. That's further emphasis on his line. Then we get into a discussion about what? Salatul Janazah. Salatul Janazah is a funeral prayer which consists of 4 essential obligations. أولا التكبير, and it has 4 takbirat in the beginning. It has 4 takbirat in the beginning. As narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, who said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam informed the people of Najashi's death, and he led them in prayer with what? 4 takbir. This is mentioned in the Muwatta of Imām Malik. Then after the 4 takbirat, there is a dua for the deceased. Meaning, after each takbir, there is a dua. After each takbir, supplication should be made for the deceased, as emphasized by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who said, if you pray over the deceased, make sincere supplication for him. The supplication is, oh Allah, he is your servant, son of your servant, and your Bani Abd wa Bani Abid, your servant, the son of your maid servant. He bore witness that there is no God but you, and Muhammad is your messenger, is your servant and messenger. If he did good, increase his goodness. If he was negligent, forgive his shortcomings. Ya Allah, do not deprive us of this reward, nor lead us astray after him. Number 3 is the intention. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are by intentions. And number 4 is the silent salutation, or as-salamu sirra, meaning to say as-salamu alaykum softly, just enough for those nearby to hear. Ibn Umar practiced saying the salutation quietly. Ibn Ashir encapsulates these obligations in the line by saying قُلُوبُهَا التَّكْبِيرُ أَرْبَعًا دُعَاء وَنِيَّةُ السَّلَامُ تَبِعًا. Then he mentions washing, shrouding, and burying the deceased, which anyone, we're not going to go into detail. I'm reading through these quickly. And possible that if you wish to review this more, you can review the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd, or courses that we have on Tadrib al-Salik, or the many other courses that Mālikī School has, and review the sections with the teachers there in terms of al-Janazah. Because this is a fard ayn class, we're going to be going over it very quickly. Washing the deceased, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, wash him with water and which is the lote tree leaves. The shrouding, which is the takfeen, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if you shroud your brother, let it be in a good shroud. And burying the individual as well is the third part, which means that when there is a specific ayah in Surah Abasa where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he causes him to die and makes a grave for him. This is what he means with the salati al-ghusl dafnun wa kafan. From the khasa'is of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is that when he was buried, or when he passed away, his wasiyah was to Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib that he would do the ghusl for him. He said, if anybody were to see my awrah, their eyes would turn blind. Their eyes would turned blind. So it could only have been Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. When Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib washed the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, normally somebody who is dead or deceased, before they wash him and before they put them in their shrouds, they actually lift their body up like, at a slight angle, and they push out they push out the bowels. All of the things that are collected, all of the waste that is collected in the intestines, they push that out. And they remove any of the filth that is in the body. Okay, that's the first step, and they remove all of that and clean the body. Once Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib did so, and he said, "تحيين وتبت ميتة, تحيين وتبت ميتة يا رسول الله." That you were beautiful, or you were good when you were alive, and you were beautiful, you were good when you are dead. And when he did this, when he said this, subhanallah, alayhi salatu wasalam, there was a perfume and musk that came out of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam that Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib could not even describe. A smell emerged from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that was more beautiful than anything that I have ever seen. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Of course, we follow like all of the things that are najasa that come out of our bodies normally. The prophets, they're all tahir, they're all clean. This is from their mu'jizat. This is from the miracles that Allah Azza wa Jal makes, like our that Allah Azza wa Jal makes them distinct. Then what is mentioned after this? The author then says, وتر كسوف عيد استسقاء سنن فجر رغيبة وتقضى للزوال والفرض يقضى أبدا بالتوال يذب نفل مطلقا وأكدت تحية ضحى تراويح ابتلت وقبل وتر مثل ظهر عصري وبعد مغرب وبعد ظهر. أيوة. So these are the various prayers that we know of that Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir rahimahullah wishes to convey to the reader. The first prayer he says about is witr, and the word witr literally means single or odd prayer. He also mentions kusuf, which is the phenomenon of an eclipse. Istisqa, which is the prayer for rain. Eid, which is we all know is the recurring festival, the day of joy. Raghiba, the desirable act. At-tawali, or at-tawal, is continuing or sequence. He also says nafil, which is a voluntary prayer. Duha, which is the mid-morning time. And tarawih, which is the night prayer in Ramadan. And one of the distinctions about tarawih is it is the definition has it with breaks. It's not a continuous prayer. It has breaks. The key concepts here are three in these verses that we just read, which are number one, that optional prayers. There are optional prayers that can specifically be made up. The second thing, there are individual optional prayers, distinguishing confirmed individual optional prayers from others. And the third is that the time of making up qada for missed obligatory prayers and optional prayers. These are the things that we're going to be reviewing in the next couple of points. Number one, the first category, which are the named prayers. The named prayers are specific optional prayers, such as with and kusuf, and Eid, and istisqa, and the Fajr Sunnah. These are these are not obligatory, but they specifically they subdivide into two categories. Right? So the first one is that they have a specific name. The second category is that they don't have a specific name. So from the ones that have a specific name, we have the witr prayer, which is a strongly emphasized sunnah that one should not neglect. As stated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "O people, al-Quran, O people of the Quran, perform witr, for Allah is witr and loves witr." Witr can be prayed as 1, 3, or 5 rak'ahs. What does that mean? That means that you pray 2 and then 1. You can pray 2 and then 1. And according to Imam Malik, he preferred to keep the final rak'ah of witr separate from the previous one. This is in difference to which madhab? Ahnaf, combine them. Sayyidina Imam Ibn Ashir rahimahullah alludes to this with the line with rum. When he says with rum, this is what we mean. Then we have the Fajr Sunnah, which is also known as the Raghiba, or the desirable prayer. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the two rak'at are better than the world and what it contains. The time for this prayer is dawn, after dawn, or before the obligatory subh prayer. If missed, it can be made up until midday, as referred to by the line of Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir, فَجْرٌ رَغِيبَةٌ وَتُقْضَى لِلزَّوَالِ. This is what he means. فَجْرٌ رَغِيبَةٌ. Raghiba is talking about fajr, which is an emphasis, which is a desirable prayer. Which means it can be made up. Is zawal, meaning noon time, midday. ثم Salat al-Eid, which is performed twice yearly. The Eid prayer consists of 2 rak'ahs with specific takbirat, 7 in the first and 5 in the second rak'ah. Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir refers to the sunnah as Eid. He mentioned specific voluntary prayers that include Salat al-Kusuf, the eclipse prayer. Right? And this is performed in solar or lunar eclipses, and it consists of 2 rak'ahs. With 2 rak'ahs in each rak'ah, the Prophet ﷺ said the sun and the moon do not eclipse due to anyone's death, but they are 2 signs. Alamatani min Allah, they are 2 signs from Allah, so when you see them, stand and pray. This is what Ibn Ashir rahimahullah refers to when he says kusuf. Thumma salat al-istisqa, which is the prayer for rain. The prayer is conducted to seek rain during drought or water shortages. And Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Ashir rahimahullah, he refers to it as istisqa in the method. ثم ذكر بعض some of the unnamed and optional salah, sunnah prayers, which include tahiyyat al-masjid. These 2 rak'at, they're performed upon entering the masjid. The masjid. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if anyone enters the masjid, let him not sit until he has prayed 2 rak'at. For the duha prayer, this is performed mid-morning, and it's encouraged by the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The maximum number of rak'at for duha is 8, while the minimum is 2. Then we have tarawih, which is performed during Ramadan, named because of the breaks taken after every 4 rak'ahs. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever stands for prayer, من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whosoever stands for prayer in Ramadan out of faith, and hope toward his past sins will be forgiven. This is what he means, Sayyidina Imam Ibn Ashir, when he says, وَأُكِدَتْ تَحِيَّةُ الضُّحَى تَرَوِيحُ ثَلَاث. Then you have something called rawatib. A ratib is like a daily habit of dhikr or salah or ibadah. Okay? For the turuq al-sufiyya, they have the ratib, which is a ratib of dhikr, azkar, which is a daily set of prayers, of dua, of dhikr that they offer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In addition to that, you have the rawatib, which are normal sunan that you pray. Optional prayers that are before or after the obligatory prayers. They include, for example, like the ones that are before Dhuhr or Maghrib or Isha. So Ibn Ashir rahimahullah, he says, وقبل وتر مثل ظهر عصري وبعد مغرب وبعد ظهري. And then there's also the nafi mutlaq, which is the unrestricted optional prayer, which you can offer whenever you wish. This is recommended at any time except the specific prohibited hours. He says the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said in a hadith Qudsi, my servant continues to draw closer to me with optional acts of worship until I love him. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is given to each of his servants, each of the believers in the mu'mineen, and the way we draw nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attract more of his love and more of his closeness and become more deserving of this love when we increase in our nawafil. Why? Because for the salat al-fariḍa, the punishment is Jahannam. But for the nawafil, the one who leaves it off, there's no punishment for them. But the one who does it, there's a great reward. And so the person only does this if they're seeking Allah's love, Allah's reward. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Like, if you want to become from the ahbab of Allah, then make يعني rush towards these beneficial opportunities of nafila, of nafil in your in your day. This is why he said no بما نفل مطلق. That is mandub. Nafil is mandub in the madhab. طيب. Then he said making up. Then he began to talk about making up these prayers. He said if a required prayer fard is missed due to sleep or forgetfulness, it must be made up in the original order and manner missed, following the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "If any of you misses a prayer due to sleep or forgetfulness, let him pray it as soon as he remembers." This is why he said, "وَالْفَرْضُ يُقْضَى أَبَدًا بِالتَّوَالِ." Or بالتوال. So how does this work? If I miss Dhuhr and Asr time came in, I pray Dhuhr, then I pray Asr. If I miss Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib time came, I pray Dhuhr, I pray Asr, then I pray Maghrib. I do not pray Maghrib. I pray Dhuhr, I pray Asr, then I pray Maghrib. Clear? Very easy. Just maintain the order of the prayer. Why? Because you have already rent that is due. Pay the rent that is due. Then pay that is the rent that is due now. When you come and you pay the credit card company, they're going to ask you about your past date first. Give me the money that you owe me already. Then pay the money that you owe me now. Right? Do things in order. So for us, maintaining the order is required and making up those prayers. Then Sayyidina Bismillah. Just checking the notes to make sure we haven't missed anything. طيب. لا بأس. الحمد لله. نعم. For the matters of Salat al-Kusuf and all of these sunnah prayers, يعني you know what, let's go over them. Let's go over them. It'll take us a little bit more, a little bit of extra time, but I think there's value in at least going over it briefly. Like, أولاً, let's talk about Salat al-Kusuf. Salat al-Kusuf is the solar eclipse prayer, and it is a sunnah, and it's distinguished by 3 points. The first is that by the following points. The first is that it has no adhan and no iqam. No adhan and no iqam. Adhan and iqam are solely for what? The obligatory prayer. The second is that it is prayed in congregation in the masjid, and it may also be prayed individually at home, and it is performed for the duration of the eclipse. It is from the time, it is from when the nafila salat is allowed in the morning until the sun reaches its zenith. Until the sun reaches its zenith. What happens? Eclipse happens in the afternoon. Then there's no prayer. For us, the solar eclipse only happens from morning all the way until noon time, until Dhuhr time, until like the beginning of Dhuhr time, which is Zawal. Is that clear? So if there was a solar eclipse that happened at 5 p.m., we wouldn't pray it. But if there was a solar eclipse that happened in the morning, then we would pray this. We would pray the Salat. Okay. I believe the other madahib they differ with this on this. The second matter is that the salah itself consists of 2 rak'at, as we've spoken about before, and each rak'ah has 2 ruku' two qiyam, two standings. According to what is said in the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, it's carried out in the following manner. In the first standing, one recites silently for approximately the duration of Surah al-Baqarah. Then one bows, and he ruku'. Then he stands up with the words, Sami Allahu liman hamida. And in the second recitation, in the second standing, he begins to recite again, but this time with the length of Surah Ali Imran, approximately. The idea here is that two, you pray two rak'at with two standings and two recitations and two ruku'as in each, and they're very long. It's a very long prayer. The eclipse is long itself. It's a very long moment. It's not like a 30-second thing. It takes probably like at least like a half an hour. Then one bows a second time. Then they stand up with the word Sami Allahu liman hamida into the third standing, this time without recitation. Then one goes into sajda the duration of Surah An-Nisa. Then one bows a third time. Then one stands up with the word Sami Allahu liman hamida. And in the fifth standing, one recites again, this time for the approximate duration of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Then one bows a fourth time. Then one stands up with the words Sami Allahu liman hamida into the sixth standing. Then one goes into sajda twice, as you normally would for any prayer, and it should be long. Then one concludes with the tashahhud and salam in a normal way. There is no inconvenience in giving a khutbah, but not as a formal, not like formally like a Jum'ah khutbah. So one may want to give like a reminder for the community, like today is the Salat al-Kusuf, this is how we pray it. The Prophet alayhi said XYZ about Salat al-Kusuf, and so on and so forth, right? And remind people to have taqwa and to make dua and all of that. The second type of prayer is Salat al-Khusuf. احنا قلنا صلاة الكسوف, we just reviewed صلاة الكسوف with the cap, now khusuf with the qaf. Salat al-Khusuf is for a lunar eclipse, and it is not a sunnah but a mustahab recommendation. And it is prayed individually at home. Doing it in groups is actually makruh, as opposed to other schools who may gather in a masjid to pray Salat al-Khusuf. For us, it's dislike to do such a thing. Number two, it has repeated cycles of 2 rak'at until the eclipse ends. You just keep praying 2 rak'at, 2 rak'at, 2 rak'at, 2 rak'at. Huh? The recitation is silent. Its time limit is from sunset, from Maghrib, all the way until Fajr. All the way until Fajr. If you ask me and say, oh, what about like if the lunar eclipse happened during the daytime? I would say to you, this is a scientific marvel. I've never seen the moon ever eclipsed during the day. The moon doesn't come out during the daytime. It's not a problem in the daytime, right? So it's not gonna happen. All right. So hopefully that's understood. Then the Salat al-Eid, it is a confirmed sunnah for every responsible person who is male. Not a confirmed sunnah for women. Women do not need to go to Salat al-Eid. Sorry. 2, free, not a slave. And 3 is a resident. They're not traveling. If you're traveling, then Salat al-Eid is not required on you. And when we go to Salat al-Eid, sure, it's not a requirement, right? And oftentimes, like masajid, they may need the extra parking or the extra space. And you see people come in and it's like a woman in a car on her own or something like that, taking up space for people. I don't know what to tell you. The Mālikī Masjid, we tell you, stay home. Lots better at home. I'm throwing out jokes out there. I'm serious but not serious at the same time. If one cannot join a jama'ah, one should pray alone. One cannot join a jama'ah, one should pray alone. Like for example, if you're out in like the wilderness, it's Eid, you pray alone. You wish. It is distinguished by 10 aspects. Number 1, has no adhan or iqama. Number 2, it has 7 takbirat, meaning you say Allahu Akbar. In the first rak'ah, include takbirat al-ihram. So you would do it this way. Allah, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Bismillah, the way I would, the way yani, I've seen like some Maliki Imams or some Imams generally, I should say, is that the final takbir, they make it a little bit more distinct, so as um, for the follower, they know that that's the final takbir and the recitation is about to happen, so they don't get confused. The Imam gives time for the followers to repeat the takbir. Unlike the normal prayer, where you say Allah Akbar quickly, this time you actually want to give some time for the followers. It is recited out loud. Each takbir is out loud. It is recommended to recite Surah Al-A'la in the first rak'ah and Surah Al-Shams in the second. Number 8 are the two khutbahs, which are performed similar to Jum'ah, and both are opened with takbir, which is repeated by the listeners. So the Imam, they would finish the salah, and get onto the minbar, and they would say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And they would say that, right? Or you would do the regular 8 takbirat, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You would do that a couple of times, and the Jama'ah would repeat with you. The best is to do it outside in an open area, like a musalla that is outside, unless conditions such as cold, rain, or extreme heat or fear make this impossible. Otherwise, the masjid will suffice. Its time limit is from when the supererogatory salah is permitted in the morning until the sun reaches its zenith on the day of Eid. Can you pray it in the evening? That has to be done before the morning time before the. The best is to do it as early as possible. The last type of salah that we talked about is salat al-istisqa. Salat al-istisqa is the prayer for rain. And it is a sunnah in periods of severe drought when water is needed for crops or for drinking. It is performed in an open area, very big open area. And the congregation of the Jama'ah, they come out on foot in humility, wearing worn clothes. You don't come to Salat al-Istisqa in your nice clothes, looking pretty and trying to be fashionable, and everybody look at me. You're begging Allah for water. You're begging Allah for mercy. How does a beggar dress? They dress with humility. They wear their clothes that are normally worn. They're worn clothes. They're old clothes. So long as the awrah is covered and it's appropriate for prayer, one should wear that. Number 3 is it is performed in 2 rak'at. It is recited out loud. The Imam gives 2 khutbahs after it, which is similar to Jama'at, and they must include a lot of asking for forgiveness or istighfar instead of takbir. Eid, you're celebrating, and Salat al-Istisqa, you're begging. Those are the 2 differences. A long supplication or dua at the end of the second khutbah. Then the Imam turns to the Qibla and turns his cape inside out. Turns his barnoos, like the cape that he wears over his shoulders, he turns it inside out. The men behind him do the same while sitting. It is recommended to fast 3 days, the 3rd day being the one they set aside for the salah and to give charity or sadaqah. Then we have Salat al-Fajr. Salat al-Fajr is prayed in a specific way. Remember, Fajr for the Mālikiyyah is the sunnah before Subh prayer, which is the fard. So, for Salat al-Fajr, how do we actually pray this? It is, first of all, it is an encouraged raghiba salah by both the word and the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said that Fajr, Surah al-Fajr better than the world and everything in it. First of all, that there are no surahs recited after Fatiha. So all you recite for Sunnat al-Fajr is actually Surah al-Fatiha only. It is silent. If there is very little time to pray Subh, Fajr is postponed until after until it is allowed to actually pray Nafila. Okay, so you pray Subh because that's the priority. Its time is from Fajr till the Salah of Subh has been prayed. If this, it can be made up between the sun becoming well clear of the horizon until the sun reaches the zenith or the zawal. Okay, if one has not prayed Fajr and Subh before sunrise, one prays Subh first, then Fajr. sometimes you miss subh prayer, right? So you pray subh first, then you pray fajr after. Note that the other sunnah salahs are not made up if missed. Unlike the obligatory salahs, which must always be made up as soon as possible and in the correct order, regardless of the time of day. While prayers missed while traveling may be shortened when made up. Prayers missed due to sickness are prayed normally. There are also specific rulings in regards to the nafilah prayers. There are specific times where they're forbidden that we miss. The first matter is that nafilah prayer, it is forbidden to pray during sunrise and during sunset. These are the two times that it's not allowed. After Asr and after Fajr. Those are the two times that the sunnah prayers are not allowed. The second is when the Imam is on the minbar. This is one of my pet peeves. When the Imam is on the minbar, you should sit down immediately. There should be no talking, no moving, nothing. Just sit. I can see these people that come into the masjid and take a whole thing. They want everybody to notice that they're playing sunnah. This is like riyah. You want to show people and show off your deen and show how pious you are. What is this? Sit down. The utmost respect must be given to the khutbah. So when the Imam is on the minbar, you're not allowed to pray nafilah. The time when praying nafilah is disliked is after Asr. It's also from sunset until the Salah of Maghrib has been performed, as well as from sunrise until the sun has come more clear over the horizon. I wanted to finish these because the next section is the sujood al-sahw. Bismillah ta'ala, I'm going to just briefly introduce sujood al-sahw. Before we do that, I'm going to just open up like 1 minute for you guys to ask any questions. If there was anything that you misunderstood, we can go over it briefly before we introduce the lines in regard to forgetfulness in prayer. We have back over. Question, could you please repeat what you said from the start of the section on Salah al-Janazah? I'm not sure what we'd have to repeat specifically. Let's review Salat al-Janazah. Right. There are 6 obligatory elements to Salat al-Janazah. The first is that it begins with 4 takbirat. The second is that yani, the first is that it consists of 4 takbirat. The hands are only lifted for the first, like Salat Eid. You only lift them once. Number 2 is that there is an unspecified dua for the deceased after every takbir, even after the 4th one. The dua that was chosen by Imam Malik is one that was narrated from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, which says, Allahumma innahu abduka وابن عبدك وابن أمتك كان يشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن محمدا عبدك ورسولك وأنت أعلم به اللهم إن كان محسنا فزد في حسناته وإن كان مسيئا فتجاوز عن سيئاته اللهم لا تحرمنا أجره ولا تفتنا بعده. Which means, oh Allah, He is your servant, the son of your male servant, your female servant. You used to witness that there is no God but your son of your male servant. You used to witness there is no God but Allah without partner, and that Muhammad is your servant and messenger. And you knew that He knew Him best. Oh Allah, if He was good, increase in His goodness, and if He was bad, overlook His bad actions. Oh Allah, do not deprive us of His reward, and do not make us fall in temptation after. Um, if, if one just says, Allahumma khfir lahu warhamhu, this is fine as well. There's no issue. Right? If it's a female, then you would just change the wording a little bit, right? A little bit. So instead of saying إنه عبدك, you would say إنها أمة. Number three is having the intention of Salat al-Janazah. Number four, number four, only one salam after the fourth takbir. The Imam says it so those next to him can hear him, but the followers they say it silently. Number five is standing throughout. There's no ruku' or sujood for Salat al-Janazah. And number six is to do it behind an Imam. And if possible, you do it at the burial site, and if not, then you do it in the masjid or wherever the place of prayer is. Um, the next matter is the death and washing. We said that it is fard kifaya to perform three actions for any dead Muslim, which is washing, a full wash, which is removing any impurities that are on the body, beginning by with the limbs of wudu, and then washing the rest of the body while it's covered by a cloth, under which one uses a thick piece of cloth to wash. Men wash men and women wash women. Number two is the shrouding, which is like a uh, in this particular step, you would apply some sort of perfume to the 7 points of prostration, 7 a'da, right? The forehead, the nose, the two hands, the knees, and the feet. For the dead man, it is recommended to use 3 or 5 pieces of cloth, so a long shirt and a turban, and izar, from the navel to the feet. Adding 2 extra big sheets totaling 5 items of clothing is better. For dead women, it is the same, but a headscarf or a khimar, which replaces the turban, and then 2 extra wraps are added to make it 7. For the burial, Sayyidina Imam Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, he mentions in his Risala that it is recommended to participate in the funeral salah and the funeral procession. Reciting Surah Yasin is recommended in connection with the funeral, and crying is acceptable unless it's overdone. Screaming, tearing one's clothes are forbidden. The deceased is buried lying on the right side with the chest towards the Qibla. There is an exception for a shaheed. He is not prayed over nor washed, shrouded or scented. Rather, he is buried in the clothes in which he was killed. But any nakedness must be covered. Also, there is no funeral salah for the stillborn. For the stillborn, any the baby who was never uh, like through a miscarriage. All of this is done according to the final status of the deceased. The expenses that are related to the burial itself are typically paid by whoever is responsible for him. Any debts are taken care of. The father would pay for his son's funeral. The son would pay for his parents' funeral. The master would pay for their slave. Um, but a wife's expenses, for example, are taking care of her own estate and her own family or whosoever is related to her. They will take care of those expenses. And of course, if the community steps in, if the community steps in and says, like, we're going to take care of whatever the funeral expenses are, however that is. Let's now go to section on سجود السهو. قال الإمام رحمه الله: فصل في نقص سنة سهوا يسن قبل السلام سجدتان أو سنن إن أكدت ومن يزد سهوا سجد بعد كذا والنقص أقل في المرض واستدراك قبلية مع قرب السلام واستدراك بعده ولو من بعد عام. طيب، أول شيء القبلي والبعدي. القبلي is refers to what comes before something. Here al-qabli refers to sujood al-qabli, prostration before the salam. Wal-ba'di is something that comes after, and it refers to sujood al-ba'di, which is a sujood that comes after the salam. Then, sujood al-sahw is the prostration of forgetfulness. And understanding the different kinds of prostration of forgetfulness will help us correct or rectify our prayer when we do inevitably make errors. The conditions for making sujood sahw are also important, and the author alludes to them here. And meaning of the phrase muqtadi is the phrase on the imam covering the laps of the follower. So clarifying when an imam's actions cover the follower's error. So there are three types of forgetfulness. It's either the forgetfulness of missing or omission, the forgetfulness of addition, or the forgetfulness of both omission and addition. If it's a sahw nafs, if someone forgets a confirmed sunnah in prayer, such as reciting silently, where reciting aloud is required, or missing multiple sunnahs, like takbir, the tashahhud, or sitting, they should perform sujood as-sahw qabla as-salam, ay al-qabli. The process involves finishing the tashahhud, then performing the two sujood as-sahw. So after the tashahhud, after the zakiyat, all the way to the end, they would say Allahu Akbar, and they would make two sajdas. You don't have to say anything. Make two sajdas. Okay? After you do those two sajdas, then you would say Assalamu alaikum. This is what Imam Ibn Ashir rahimahullah means. فصل لنقص سنة سهو يسن يسن قبل السلام سجدتان أو السنن. إن أكدت. This is a very important word here because it has to be a sunnah mu'akkada. Sunnah mu'akkada. This will make sense. Then there is the second type, which is sahw ziyada. And this is if someone accidentally adds an action, such as reciting aloud where silence is required, or adding an extra rak'ah or sujood. They should perform something called sujood as-sahw al-ba'di, which is after the salam. This is based on the story of Yadaini, who pointed out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that prayer after the two rak'ahs instead of the four. After confirming the mistake, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam completed the prayer and performed two sujood as-sahw. Ibn Ashir rahimahullah says, وَمَنْ يَزِدْ سَهْوًا سَجَدَ بَعْدَ كَذَا. So, and the last case is the one who both forgets and they add. If someone forgets and adds, I forget a step and I also added something else. Maybe you omitted the surah after Fajr and then you accidentally rose to break the rak'ah. Priority is given to the omission. Priority is given to what? The omission. That which is naqs from the salah. And so two sujood are done before the salah. He says, وَالنَّقْصَ غُلِّبَ إِنْ وَرَدَ. So if someone forgets to perform sujood sahw, this is a possibility as well. This is a possibility as well. So if someone forgets to perform sujood sahw, what should they do? If you forget to perform sujood sahw, if they remember it right after the final salam, they should perform it immediately. Perform it immediately, even if they missed something, immediately do. If a long time has passed, the sujood is invalidated. A prolonged time is defined by either leaving the masjid or a considerable delay from the salah. Number two, if the sujood was due to omitting three or more sunnahs, like the surah, the prayer is invalid. Is invalidated. If fewer than three, the prayer remains valid without sujood. Ibn Ashir rahimahullah, he says, وَإِسْتِغْنَاءُ الْقَبْلِيَّةِ مَعَ قُرْبِ السَّلَامِ. ثم, the third type, which is forgetting sujood al-ba'di, right? Because if sujood al-ba'di, which is after the final salam, was required, but it was forgotten, it should be performed whenever remembered, even if a year later. Why the difference here? Because something missing from the salah is different than adding something to the salah. Something missing from the salah is incomplete, but adding technically the salah is completed. The requirements of the salah were completed. But there was just something added to the salah. And so they should perform the ba'di as soon as they remember. What happens if I'm following the imam? What happens if I'm following the imam and I personally miss something? If a follower makes an error in prayer while behind the imam's sujood covers the follower's mistake, except in cases of missing an entire rak'ah, sujood for the opening takbir or the final salam. And Ibn Ashir mentioned this by saying, عن مقتد يحمل هذين الإمام. Inshallah ta'ala, we will define these further in the next coming go over sujood al-sahwi. That being said, يعني the Salat Maghrib time is almost out here, and so I do ask for forgiveness here. Inshallah, we'll review the recording and make sure that these are missed. If there were issues with the audio, inshallah, we'll go over any missed areas or have. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الرحيم العفو. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.